Okay. So, it's- okay, so everything is working. Well, let me first start by thanking the organizers of this very nice interdisciplinary workshop. And in this talk, I'm going to present also a very quite interdisciplinary talk in a sense. I will explain some work that I've been carrying out together with some collaborators on topological amplification. And this is work that we have been doing in the last few years. And I mean, well, this is the outline so that you understand a little bit, because I'm going to speak about several things. And so basically, what I will explain is that there is a relation between directional amplification and topology in dissipative systems. And I will explain how this can be implemented with superconducting circuits, although there are other possible implementations as well, and even have some applications, for example, for designing directional amplifiers. And finally, I will present some very recent results on how to observe these topological properties in interacting systems as well. So the motivation for this work is actually a very kind of fundamental one. It's trying to understand how topology appears in dissipative systems. So we know that in solid state physics, the paradigmatic example of a topological system is the quantum Hall effect. And here, topology is detected by measuring properties of the system, like the conductivity. So actually, topology is made is observable by the existence of H states that allow current to flow in the system. So it would be nice to have something similar if we think about photonic systems, or more broadly bosonic systems, like which would also include the mechanical systems, for example. It would be nice to have a similar definition or a similar definition of topology. So actually, this idea has been very intensively studied in the last years. So this is one field of topological photonics. And there are several ways to approach this topological topology of open systems. So one could, for example, look at non-Hermitian physics. It's a very nice approach. However, it's not always easy to understand how to measure the properties of non-Hermitian matrix. So it's true that there are non-Hermitian physics appears in the system because they are open. So you have some non-Hermitian going on. But sometimes how this translates into observables, such as those in the quantum Hall effect, is not so clear. But don't worry.
Huh? I think the issue is that you are not sharing the screen over Zoom. The one that you are is just a different one.
Really?
I think you can just stop share and then switch the screen.
What? I have to
just click on this.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay, anyways, the question is, can we motivate topology with response functions in open systems? So if we think about response functions, sorry, let me, I was talking a bit in advance. So let me first give you some motivation to why we expect topology to, or what kind of topology we would expect in a dissipative system. So first of all, let's think about what happens in non-reciprocal systems, which are pretty good candidates for being topological systems. So in a typical non-reciprocal system, what we have is a system that can be described. For example, you can have a set of bosonic modes that can be described by a set of equations of motion. And if you break time universal symmetry, typically what you find is that there are non-reciprocal couplings between different modes, and this leads to some directionality in the system. Somehow, directionality, for example, directional amplification, is something that sounds like a topological effect. If you think, for example, in different boundary conditions, you find that periodic boundary conditions and open boundary conditions are very different for these non-reciprocal systems. In particular, you have periodic boundary conditions and a directional amplified medium. Amplification is going to happen forever, and the system will eventually turn unstable. However, in an open system, you can find that directional amplification leads to accumulation of photons in one end of the system. This is also something that is reminiscent of an edge state somehow. So all these things point out to a description of topology that should appear, especially in non-reciprocal systems. So, since we want to motivate topology with response functions, the natural way to start is the input-output theory, which is the kind of the conductance of photonic systems in a sense. So if you have a linear system, then you can typically describe the dynamics in terms of input-output equations like this, where you have some Heisenberg equations for the fields, and that can be expressed in terms of a non-Hermitian matrix H and some input fields, right? Actually, you can, if you are interested in, you can solve the problem by using the Green's function, which is the inverse of the non-Hermitian matrix H. So this matrix is sometimes called a non-Hermitian matrix, a Hamiltonian or dynamical matrix. There are all kinds of notations. Even we have been using orthogonal notations along our different papers. But in any case, it always comes down to you can always solve these equations by inverting the H and getting a Green's function. So let's assume, for example, that we consider the omega 0 case, where you forget about omega and that's the inverse of H. So if we expect some topological properties, the first thing that we should calculate is the eigenstate of H. Are going to allow you to calculate also the inverse of H. So this is a bit problematic because once you have a non-Hermitian matrix, everything starts losing, not making so much sense because you don't have an orthonormal basis of eigenstates anymore. So it's complicated to talk about modes and everything problem. However, there is a more useful mathematical tool that is called singular Rayleigh decomposition that allows you to obtain orthonormal basis that you can use to invert the non-Hermitian matrix. So a singular Rayleigh decomposition is a very common tool in quantum information theory, and this is basically a recomposition of a matrix in terms of a product of two unitary matrices, U and V. In the middle, you have a diagonal matrix of that is a non-negative matrix S. So this is very convenient. It's actually quite practical because if you think of a Green's function, if you express it Green's function in terms of this set of orthonormal modes, you have a sense of having kind of an incoming part and outcoming part of the Green's function. So if I write the inverse of H, so the Green's function in terms of B, S, and U, the U, I plug it into the equations of motion, then the output field is going to, or the fields in the system are going to have several components, and the U determines how the fields enter into the system, and the V of the singular Rayleigh decomposition tells you how they leave the system. And the inverse of the singular value tells you what is the strength of the channels. So this is something that we discovered when studying the system, and I thought this was a very nice idea. So this should be somehow in the literature. And actually, it turns out that engineers use singular Rayleigh decomposition when studying microwave systems. So I just found this paper actually when preparing the talk. And this paper has a lot of citations in engineering. It has like 19,000 citations, something like this. So it's a well-known idea in engineering, and it's very nice. But still, it doesn't solve. It doesn't tell us anything about topology. So now what is the connection between singular value composition and topology? Here is where things get more interesting. So remember that we now have decided to study the non-Hermitian matrices in terms of singular values. Now it turns out that the singular value, the singular vectors of a matrix are related to the eigenvectors of an Hermitian matrix that you can build with your original non-Hermitian matrix. So if I take my H matrix and I build an extended effective Hamiltonian, then the eigenstates of the extended Hamiltonian turn out to be the singular vectors of the original non-Hermitian matrix. This is a very simple mathematical proof, and you can just by inspection show that. So that's a very interesting thing. And now the funny thing is that this extended matrix has a very special symmetry that is called Kyrian symmetry. And this is a symmetry that basically turns one-dimensional systems into non-trivial topological insulators. You're familiar with pieces of the SSH model, for example. This is the symmetry, the sublattice symmetry, this is the Kyrian symmetry, and it appears in other situations. So this means that actually the singular vectors, because they are the eigenstates of this Kyrian Hamiltonian, are going to be topological, typically. So this means also that in case we find topological eigenstates of the extended matrix, there are going to be zero singular values in the original non-Hermitian matrix. Okay, this is kind of the mathematical foundation for our work. And now what is interesting is that if you have these zero singular values, remember that the singular values determine the strength of the input and output channels. So whenever you find a zero singular value, this means that this Green's function is going to explode. It's going to basically be enhanced exponentially. And this is actually a phenomenon that leads to directional amplification. So this basically connects topology, so the appearance of zero singular values, with the onset of directional amplification through this inverse of the zero singular values. Okay, so this is the basis of our work, and just to give you an example, let's consider the Hatano-Nelson model, kind of the paradigm of non-Hermitian physics. Then I'm going to consider a quantum Hatano-Nelson model. So for us, the Hatano-Nelson model is not going to be a non-Hermitian matrix, but really a tonic lattice. So for this, we can consider it's a little bit of a not super easy to implement model for the moment. So we can consider that we have some incoherent pump into the system. So this is this term P, together with some dissipation and some complex tunneling between sides. So if you put everything together, then you find that the dynamics is like this Hatano-Nelson models of non-Hermitian physics. Actually, you can write down equations of motion here, and you find that because there are different contributions from coherent tunneling and collective pump, you find the typical symmetry between right and left tunnels in non-reciprocal systems. So we can apply our theory to this model, and we find a phase diagram, the topological phase diagram, that typically depends on the pump and the frequency of the fields. You could choose other parameters, of course, and basically we find that there are trivial regions. For example, if omega is very large, we expect that the system gets out of resonance or nothing interesting happens. But for some values within the circle that I plot here, you find this topological region with zero singular vectors. And actually, if you calculate the gain in the system, so this is the amplification property that you obtain for incoming fields, you find that within the topological region, the system behaves as an amplifier. So you get an exponential amplification that means that the gain grows exponentially with the size of the system. This is what is represented in this plot here. So this is very nice. Actually, it's very interesting to even have some applications because it tells you when a photonic lattice can be used to amplify signals. And also it has the added benefit that because everything is topological, here the properties of the system are protected by topology. Something that is very interesting as well is that if you look at our formalism, we have the chiral symmetry that we have is kind of a construction from it's kind of an artifact from the theory. It's not a physical symmetry. This means that this is an example of a one-dimensional system where topology is not protected by a physical symmetry. So this is not an STP phase. It's a topological phase, no matter what. So you can have any disorder because the symmetry is an internal symmetry of the Euclidean, if you want to put it in this way. So that's just for the theories to mention because some people find this very curious. Okay, another interesting thing is that actually fluctuations do get amplified as well. You can use this theory, and instead of using it for calculating input-output relations, you can use this function as well to calculate what are the fluctuations in the steady state. And actually, we came up with this equation that tells you what are the correlations between photons set as a frequency omega between different sites. In terms of the Green's function, this equation was previously known in the literature, and it's not found explicitly in many places, but it's a very simple equation. It's also very intuitive because it tells you that if you want to calculate correlations between sites, you can interpret this correlation as happening from the propagation of incoherent photons created by the pump and propagating to different sites. But anyways, the bottom line of this slide is just that the same laws that apply to the input-output relation also apply to incoherent photons in the steady state. And actually, you can also find, if you do an explicit calculation in the Hadano-Nelson model, then you find that photons also accumulate in one end of the chain because they follow the S state somehow that happens when these singular vectors. Okay, so how to implement these things in the lab is not so simple in the sense that you need to have all these phases, complex couplings, and incoherent band going on, and that's not easy. We have some proposal about how to do this with periodic gradients, but it's not simple. So the question is whether this can appear more natural in other setups. And actually, a very nice candidate is superconducting circuits because actually there are already devices that kind of look like that I've been explaining. In particular, in the way people measure qubit states in superconducting quantum computers is by using just some traveling wave parametric amplifiers that are can be thought like systems of coupled arrays and also have some amplification properties. So one may wonder whether something like this is possible. There are also entire cosonic chains as a good candidate for this topological amplification, and here there is very interesting theory and also experimental work by in automechanical physics by Hagen, Javier, and collaborators. And similar ideas have been realized with superconducting circuits. But so the idea is, so let's see if this topological thing works for this couple of parametric amplifiers. And actually, everything we have to do is to extend everything, okay, to volume of the space. And actually, it's basically you can also write input-output relations, and you can follow the same ideas. You can find singular value composition, and after you can find a winding number that allows you to predict whether your system is a topological insulator or not. And well, finally, this can be implemented with superconducting circuits, and for this, what you need to do is to have some nonlinearity that you pump with an external drive, and this is what allows you to have these parametric terms in the end. Okay, so actually this was work carried mostly by my collaborator Tomás Ramos, who came up with a design for topological for building up this topological amplifier with several combinations of superconducting circuits. So the main characteristic of these kind of amplifiers is that because we have this directionality, this means that directional amplification, so forward gain, increases exponentially, but reverse gain, so the radiation emission in the opposite direction, is also suppressed exponentially. So this is this strong directionality that comes from the topology of the system is a very, very nice property. In particular, this could be applied in superconducting quantum computers, because basically what people need for detecting the state of the qubit is amplifiers that do not produce any feedback on the qubits. And this is currently not possible with the amplifier people use. So normally, you need to have your amplifier outside the rheostat, and this our design, if it works in practice, that I hope it does, would allow to have an on-chip amplifier because of this directionality. These are ideas that we are still, well, we have a patent application on this idea, but we hope this can be implemented soon. Anyway, so just to finish my talk, everything I've been talking about is quite, it's mostly single band physics. So I've been all the time discussing Gaussian systems, and all we need to do is diagonalize images for series. It's a very nice field for me. I'm a condensed matter physicist, so I normally used to do things that are, I don't know, that have these scaling problems and so on. So one question that is quite natural is whether all this physics survives into the main body of the field. So, and for answering this question, the natural thing to do is to investigate nonlinear Hamiltonians that should have this kind of physics in some way, right? And like at least that could have excitations or fluctuations that show this topological amplification. So what we did, this is some work that I've done with collaborators in France, like Tommaso Roskilde and Laszlo Assad. So we looked at driven dissipative Bose-Hubbard chains with a driving that depends on the position. So we kind of take the usual, this is the simplest driven dissipative system, I would say. But the only thing that we do is that we add, we break the universal symmetry by adding this side dependence, so to the drive. So actually, this is a complicated problem because now we have a many-body system, and what we did was to use a variational Gaussian ansatz, which is kind of a simple approximation that we can use when we do functions. So we wrote down the position of motion, and basically we assume that the correlators factorize as if the system was a Gaussian, as if the state was a Gaussian. So basically, you have to write down a equation of motion and apply this theorem. Actually, this can be proved to be a purely variational method. This is shown in these papers by Ignacio Dirac's group and Tommaso. And basically, what we got is a very interesting phase diagram. So if you do this calculation, I mean, if we didn't have this side dependence of the phase, we would have our usual driven dissipative Bose-Hubbard system with a first order phase transition between a bright phase and a dark phase. Would you expect to have a regime with a lot of photons and a low photon regime, and in between a first order phase transition. What we found here is that you have these two phases. I call them 1 and 3. So these are phase 1 with a small number of bosons, and a phase 3. But in between there appears a second phase. So it's kind of an intermediate phase with this high and low boson regimes simply coexist together. And what happens in this phase is that there are large fluctuations. And actually, if you calculate the winding number for topological amplification, it turns out to be non-zero in this region. So more specifically, to understand what happens, what we can do is to scan this region, these two regions from the border and increase the power. So if we do so, what we find is that there is kind of a coexistence between these high and low boson number regions, and the frontier between the two regions is moved to the left as we go to this region. Actually, to characterize the system, we can also calculate the winding number. So the winding number in each of the regions in the system. It sounds a bit weird because winding numbers are global properties of the system, but you can define a winding number that corresponds to the topology of the system locally. So if the system was, for example, this nu j means that you take the local values of the parameters, the local parameters of the Hamiltonian, and you compute the winding number with those parameters. So if you do so, you find these gray areas here that tell you where this winding number is different from zero. And these areas agree with topological amplification properties happening in the system. So basically, the way we can understand this transition is by realizing that there is some topological amplification that is switched on by the drive, and then remember that topological amplification also amplifies the fluctuations. So at some point, this topological amplification saturates the system, and those regions that are saturated get into the high photon density phase. And this is what you see here. So as we increase the driving, there are more and more sites in the chain that are getting saturated, and this is what moves the topological region to the left. I don't know if this was clear, but this somehow, well, it's you can also explicitly calculate this winding number, and you see that this topological region is created initially over all the chain, but then it only survives for some sites, and in the end, it's totally killed, and you enter into the beginning phase. So basically, the summary is that in this driven Bosch-Hubbard system, the first order phase transition is substituted by a topological phase that sweeps off the low boson density phase and creates the new high density phase. Okay, this is we are finishing up a paper on this. Hopefully, it will be in the archive soon. So, just to conclude, I've just shown that there is this connection between topology and directional amplification, and we can have some applications, for example, for amplifiers. I think that I'm very excited about whether this can have two applications, because we found that, for example, for the case of superconducting amplifiers, we've got a lot of interest by experimentalists and even companies. So I wonder whether these ideas can be extended to other systems like trapped ions or ultra force tension and so on. So let me finish by thanking my collaborators, especially Tomás Ramos, who has been working a lot on the implementation with superconducting circuits. Now Álvaro Gómez was collaborating with Casson in the theory of the topological description. And finally, Miguel Claver is my PhD student who is developing further these ideas. And Tommaso and Laszlo are working with me on the process Java. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the talk. I'm curious about the input output perturbation. Basically, you have for the input of this regulator frequency that is the frequency that allows you to go in the amplification or not, right? Can you also play with the, let's say, the condition? I mean, fixed frequency, I don't know, this or let's say not the frequency, but the structure of the quantum state the input to a set of not that is topological either, or is something that is without let's say outside the domain of this thing.
I mean, if you go into this kind of process Java, so you use couple parametric amplifiers, then you get these number structure in the problem. So then you really have you already want to play the quadrature of the amplifier, and then you can have trivial topology happening only for certain components. That's good. But for that, you need to use this. You have to go into this parametric amplifier, and then you need to have like a nesting of restriction. Because you actually amplify only certain quadrature.
So, you may during the talk that we have a zero, singular value that is implies sort of a correlation. Can you elucidate what you mean? Because alone can't, this can't be topology, like, many examples of this generic matrix doesn't have, some subspaces that is absent and therefore it's a zero or a zero.
Yeah.
What is the maps and vectors, sphere or something?
Well, more specifically, it's not really that the singular vectors are zero, but they increase exponentially in the system side. So they are never mathematically zero. I mean, if you go to the topological regime, the zero singular vector, the zero singular value. These these have the same value as the zero negative states of the extended model. And these zero negative states are not zero for finite size systems, but they have exponentially small values in system size. It's never mathematically, you are never mathematically in a limit of simply zero singular values. That's what, otherwise the whole response of the system is reversed.
So you need some sense of space and edge.
That's right, yes. You need to work with finite size systems. That's very important. Obviously, because this is an amplification, you have directional amplification which will be really defined in a thermodynamic limit, right?